Marcus Rivera stepped off the military transport bus at Fort Benning, Georgia, carrying nothing but a worn duffel bag and the weight of everyone's low expectations. At 19, Marcus was smaller than most recruits, standing barely 5 feet 7 inches tall with a lean frame that looked more suited for running track than military combat. What made him stand out even more was the intricate black viper tattoo that coiled around his right forearm, its detailed scales and piercing eyes visible whenever he rolled up his sleeves. The other recruits noticed the tattoo immediately. During the first week of basic training, whispers followed Marcus everywhere. Some assumed he was trying to look tough to compensate for his size. Others figured he was just another wannabe soldier who watched too many action movies. The drill sergeants seemed to share this sentiment, often singling him out for extra push-ups or making him repeat exercises until his arms shook with exhaustion. Rivera. You think that snake on your arm makes you special? Drill Sergeant Thompson would bellow during morning PT. A drop and, give me 50. Maybe that'll teach you some real strength instead of relying on ink. Marcus never responded with anything but, yes, Drill Sergeant, but, inside, frustration burned like a slow fire. The tattoo wasn't about looking tough or trying to intimidate anyone. It meant something deeper, something personal that he couldn't explain to people who had already made up their minds about him. The mockery intensified during weapons training. While other recruits seemed to naturally grasp the mechanics of their rifles, Marcus struggled initially. His hands, though steady, were smaller than average, making some grips feel awkward. Sergeant Williams, the weapons instructor, noticed this immediately. Well, Rivera. Seems like your Viper can't help you hold a real weapon, Williams said with a smirk as Marcus fumbled with the rifle's safety mechanism during his first attempt. Maybe you should have gotten a tattoo of something more useful, like proper-sized hands. The other recruits chuckled, and Marcus felt his face burn with embarrassment. But, instead of getting angry or defensive, something clicked inside him. That evening, while others relaxed in the barracks, Marcus requested additional time at the firing range. He studied the weapon manual until his eyes hurt, practicing the loading sequence over and over until muscle memory took over. During combat drills, the physical challenges seemed designed to highlight Marcus's limitations. The obstacle course featured walls that taller recruits could easily scale while Marcus had to find alternative approaches. Rope climbing exercises left him hanging while others powered through with upper body strength he simply didn't possess yet. Each failure was met with more criticism from instructors and snickers from fellow recruits. Maybe the Army isn't for everyone, Rivera suggested Private Johnson one evening as they cleaned their gear. No shame in admitting you're not cut out for this life. Some people are just built different. Johnson was one of the bigger recruits, a former college football player who seemed to breeze through every physical challenge. His comment stung because part of Marcus wondered if it might be true. Maybe he was fooling himself thinking he could make it through basic training, let alone succeed in the military. But Marcus remembered why he had enlisted in the first place. Growing up in East Los Angeles, he had seen too many of his friends fall into gangs or drugs. His older brother Danny had joined the military 5 years earlier and credited it with saving his life. Danny had told Marcus that the military wasn't just about being the biggest or strongest, it was about heart, determination, and finding ways to overcome obstacles that seemed impossible. The black Viper tattoo had been Danny's idea. Vipers aren't the biggest snakes, Danny had explained when they got matching tattoos before his deployment. But they're precise, patient, and deadly when they need to be. They don't rely on size, they rely on skill and intelligence. Marcus began applying this philosophy to his training. While other recruits focused on brute force approaches to obstacles, he studied alternative techniques. He watched how successful soldiers moved, noting subtle details that made them more efficient. During hand-to-hand combat training, he learned that speed and technique could often overcome size advantages. The turning point came during a particularly brutal week of field exercises. The recruits were divided into squads for a nighttime navigation challenge through rough terrain. Marcus found himself grouped with Johnson and 2 other larger recruits who made it clear they expected him to slow them down. "Just try to keep up, Rivera," Johnson said as they prepared to move out. "We're not waiting around for you to figure out which way is north." The exercise required each squad to navigate several miles through dense woods using only compass and map, locate 3 checkpoints, and return to base before dawn. It was designed to test not just navigation skills but teamwork, endurance, and problem-solving under pressure. 20 minutes into the exercise, Johnson confidently led the group in what he claimed was the right direction. Marcus checked his compass and realized they were heading nearly 30 degrees off course. When he tried to point this out, Johnson dismissed him. "I played football, Rivera. I know how to read terrain. That tattoo of yours didn't come with navigation skills." Marcus decided to follow quietly while keeping track of their actual position. As the night wore on, it became clear they were lost. Johnson's confidence turned to frustration as landmarks didn't appear where he expected them. The other squad members began to panic as precious time slipped away. Finally, as dawn approached and they still hadn't found a single checkpoint, Johnson admitted they needed help. Marcus pulled out his compass and map, showing them exactly where they had gone wrong and plotting a direct route to at least one checkpoint before time ran out. "How did you know all that?" asked Private Chen, one of the quieter members of their squad. "I've been tracking our position the whole time," Marcus replied simply. "My brother taught me that you don't just trust one person's judgment in the field. You always have a backup plan." They managed to reach one checkpoint and return to base just as the deadline expired. While it wasn't the best performance, it wasn't the worst either. More importantly, Marcus had proven to his squadmates that he brought value beyond what they initially assumed. Word of Marcus's navigation skills spread quietly through the platoon. Some recruits began asking him for help with map reading during their free time. The drill sergeants noticed this shift but didn't comment directly. However, Marcus observed that their criticism became more focused on specific improvements rather than general mockery. The real test came during the final week of basic training. Colonel Harrison, the base commander, made one of his rare visits to observe the graduating class. Harrison was a legend among military personnel, a decorated veteran of multiple conflicts known for his ability to spot potential in soldiers that others might overlook. As the colonel walked through various training exercises, Marcus was participating in a combat simulation designed to test individual decision-making under pressure. The scenario involved a mock urban environment where recruits had to clear buildings while protecting civilian targets and neutralizing enemy positions. Most recruits approached the exercise with overwhelming force, moving quickly through the environment and engaging targets aggressively. This strategy worked for some but often resulted in civilian casualties that would have been mission failures in real combat situations. When Marcus's turn came, he took a different approach. Instead of rushing in, he spent precious seconds observing the layout, identifying potential civilian locations, and planning a methodical approach that prioritized precision over speed. His movements through the mock environment were deliberate and careful, each decision calculated to minimize risk while achieving objectives. The exercise took him longer than most recruits, and Marcus could hear some muttering from observers about his slow pace. But, when the results were tallied, he had successfully neutralized all enemy targets while suffering 0 civilian casualties and minimal damage to himself. Colonel Harrison had been watching this particular run with unusual interest. As Marcus exited the simulation area, he noticed the colonel studying him intently, his eyes moving from Marcus's performance scores to the black viper tattoo on his arm. What Marcus didn't know was that Colonel Harrison had his own military history with viper symbolism, and the sight of that particular tattoo had triggered a recognition that would change everything about his military career. The graduation ceremony was scheduled for the next morning, but Marcus sensed that something significant was about to happen. That evening, as he prepared his dress uniform and reflected on the challenging weeks behind him, he had no idea that his real journey was just beginning. The mockery and doubt that had defined his early training experience had forged him into something stronger and more focused than he had been when he arrived. The black viper tattoo that had once been a source of ridicule was about to become a symbol of recognition from someone who truly understood its meaning. As Marcus lay in his bunk that final night of basic training, listening to the quiet conversations of his fellow recruits, he thought about his brother Danny and the advice that had carried him through the hardest moments. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but he was no longer the uncertain young man who had stepped off that transport bus weeks ago. The Viper had learned patience, precision, and when to strike. Now it was time to see if the army was ready for what Marcus Rivera could really do. The morning of graduation arrived with the crisp efficiency that defined military life. Marcus stood in formation with his fellow recruits, their dress uniforms pressed to perfection, boots shined to mirror brightness. The transformation from the ragged group that had arrived weeks ago was remarkable. Where once there had been uncertainty and individual struggles, now stood a unit of disciplined soldiers ready for their next assignment. Colonel Harrison took his position at the podium, his chest decorated with ribbons that told the story of a distinguished career spanning 3 decades. His presence commanded immediate attention, and even the most confident recruits straightened their posture under his scrutinizing gaze. Harrison was known throughout the Army for his legendary service record and his uncanny ability to identify soldiers who would go on to achieve greatness. As the colonel began his remarks about duty, honor, and service, Marcus felt the weight of the moment. Basic training had pushed him beyond limits he didn't know he possessed. The young man who had arrived carrying everyone's doubts had discovered reserves of strength, intelligence, and determination that even he hadn't realized were there. Today, you join the ranks of the United States Army, Colonel Harrison's voice carried across the formation. But, your real education begins now. Some of you will serve with distinction in routine assignments. Others will be called upon for missions that will test everything you've learned here and more. The colonel's eyes swept across the formation, lingering for a moment on Marcus before continuing. There was something in that brief glance that Marcus couldn't interpret, a recognition that seemed to suggest the colonel saw more than just another graduating recruit. After the formal ceremony concluded and families began arriving for congratulations and photographs, Marcus expected to collect his orders and prepare for his assigned unit like everyone else. Instead, he was approached by Sergeant First Class Rodriguez, Colonel Harrison's aide. "Private Rivera, the colonel would like a word with you," Rodriguez said quietly. "Follow me." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. In military culture, being singled out by a high-ranking officer could mean either extraordinary opportunity or serious trouble, and he had no idea which category he fell into. He followed Rodriguez across the parade ground to the administrative building where Colonel Harrison maintained his office. The colonel's office reflected his years of service, walls lined with commendations, photographs with presidents and foreign dignitaries, and artifacts from deployments around the world. Harrison sat behind an imposing oak desk, but, when Marcus entered, the colonel stood and gestured to a chair across from him. "Take a seat, Private Rivera," Harrison said, his tone less formal than Marcus expected. "I've been reviewing your training records, and I wanted to speak with you personally before you received your assignment." Marcus sat rigidly at attention, unsure what to expect. Harrison walked around the desk and leaned against its front edge, creating a less intimidating dynamic than if he had remained seated behind it. "Tell me about that tattoo," Harrison said, nodding toward Marcus's arm. The question caught Marcus off guard. Throughout basic training, the tattoo had been a source of criticism and mockery. No one had ever asked about its actual meaning or significance. "Sir, it's a black viper. I got it with my brother before his deployment," Marcus replied carefully. "Your brother served?" Harrison asked. "Yes, sir. Staff Sergeant Danny Rivera, currently deployed with the 82nd Airborne. He's done 3 tours in Afghanistan." Harrison nodded thoughtfully. "And why a viper specifically?" Marcus hesitated for a moment, then decided honesty was his best approach. "My brother said vipers aren't the biggest or strongest predators, but they're precise and patient. They don't rely on size or intimidation. They use intelligence and timing to accomplish their mission." A slight smile crossed Harrison's face. "Interesting philosophy. And how do you think that applies to military service?" "Sir, I learned during training that success isn't always about being the biggest or strongest soldier. Sometimes it's about finding the right approach, being patient when others rush in, and using your brain as much as your muscles." Harrison walked over to a bookshelf and pulled down a framed photograph. He handed it to Marcus, who was stunned by what he saw. The photo showed a much younger Colonel Harrison in combat gear, standing with a special operations team in what appeared to be a jungle environment. But, what caught Marcus's attention immediately was the unit patch visible on Harrison's uniform, a coiled black Viper with the words "Strike Swift, Strike Sure" beneath it. That was taken in Panama, 1989, Harrison explained. I was a young lieutenant assigned to a special reconnaissance unit. Our mission was to gather intelligence behind enemy lines and eliminate high-value targets when necessary. We called ourselves the Black Vipers. Marcus stared at the photograph, understanding beginning to dawn. Sir, your unit used the same symbol? Not just the same symbol, Rivera. The exact same design. Down to the scale pattern and the way the head is positioned. Harrison pointed to the tattoo on Marcus's arm. Where exactly did you and your brother get that particular design? Marcus thought back to the day he and Danny had gotten their tattoos. There was a shop in East LA run by an older veteran. Danny said he knew the guy from somewhere, but he never explained how. The artist showed us this specific design and said it was special, that it meant something important to certain soldiers. Harrison was quiet for a long moment, studying the photograph and then looking again at Marcus's tattoo. That veteran your brother knew was probably Miguel Santos, wasn't he? Older Hispanic man, missing part of his left hand? Yes, sir, Marcus said, amazement in his voice. That's exactly who it was. How did you know? Because Sergeant Santos served with the Black Vipers for 4 years. He was our communications specialist, one of the best soldiers I ever worked with. He lost those fingers disarming a booby trap that would have killed 3 of us. Harrison set the photograph aside. Santos wasn't supposed to share that design with anyone outside our unit. The fact that he gave it to your brother suggests Danny earned it somehow. Marcus felt a surge of pride mixed with confusion. But, sir, Danny never mentioned serving with a special unit. He was regular infantry as far as I knew. Your brother might have done some temporary duty assignments that he can't discuss, even with family. What matters is that Santos recognized something in him worthy of that symbol. Harrison walked back to his desk and picked up a folder. Which brings me to why I wanted to speak with you. The colonel opened the folder and reviewed its contents. Your performance during basic training was remarkable, Rivera, but not in the way most people might expect. Your test scores were solid but not exceptional. Your physical fitness improved significantly, but you're still not the strongest in your class. What caught my attention was your problem-solving approach and your performance under pressure. Harrison pulled out several evaluation sheets. Your drill sergeants noted that you consistently found alternative solutions to physical challenges. Your weapons instructors reported that once you mastered the basics, your accuracy scores were in the top 10% of your class. Most importantly, your combat simulation results showed tactical thinking that impressed experienced officers. Marcus listened intently, unsure where this conversation was heading but sensing it was important. There's something else, Harrison continued. During your final field exercise, you correctly identified that your squad leader had taken you off course, but, instead of creating conflict, you quietly tracked your actual position and only spoke up when asked. That shows judgment and maturity that many soldiers never develop. The colonel closed the folder and looked directly at Marcus. I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to think carefully before answering. Are you interested in serving your country in ways that might go beyond conventional military assignments? Marcus felt his heart rate increase. The question seemed loaded with implications he couldn't fully grasp. Sir, I joined the army to serve my country and to challenge myself to become more than I was. If there are ways to do that more effectively, I'm interested in hearing about them. Harrison nodded approvingly. Good answer. What I'm about to tell you cannot be discussed with anyone, including your brother, until you're formally cleared to do so. Understood? Yes, sir. The Black Vipers still exist, Rivera, but not in the way they did during my time in Panama. Today, they operate as part of a joint task force that handles specialized reconnaissance and direct action missions around the world. The unit is small, highly selective, and requires soldiers who can think independently while following orders precisely. Marcus felt excitement building but tried to maintain his composure. Based on your performance here and the significance of that tattoo, I'm recommending you for assessment with the unit," Harrison continued. "This would mean additional training far beyond what you've experienced here, assignments that could take you anywhere in the world, and responsibilities that would challenge everything you think you know about military service." The offer was more than Marcus had ever imagined possible. Just weeks ago, he had been the recruit everyone expected to fail. Now, a colonel was offering him a chance at elite military service. "Sir, I'm honored by the recommendation, but I have to ask, why me? There were recruits in my class who performed better in almost every measurable way." Harrison smiled. "Because, Rivera, the best special operations soldiers aren't always the ones who look the part on paper. They're the ones who find ways to succeed when conventional approaches fail. They're patient when others are impulsive, creative when others follow routine, and calm when others panic. Your brother understood that when he chose the tattoo design, and you've proven it during your time here." The colonel stood, signaling the meeting was nearing its end. "I'm not going to pressure you for an immediate answer. This is a decision that will affect your entire military career and, possibly, your life beyond service. Take the weekend to think about it. If you're interested, report to my office Monday morning at 0800. As Marcus prepared to leave, Harrison added one final comment. "Rivera, regardless of what you decide, you should know that you've already proven wrong everyone who doubted you could succeed here. That tattoo isn't just ink on your arm, it's a symbol of potential that you're just beginning to understand." Walking back across the base, Marcus felt the weight of opportunity and responsibility settling on his shoulders. The black viper coiled around his arm seemed to pulse with new significance. What had started as mockery from fellow recruits and drill sergeants had evolved into recognition from one of the Army's most respected officers. That evening, as Marcus called his parents to tell them about his graduation, he found himself unable to mention the conversation with Colonel Harrison. The secret burned inside him, a mixture of excitement and uncertainty about a future he had never imagined possible. The weekend would give him time to consider the implications of Harrison's offer, but, deep down, Marcus already knew his answer. The Viper had been patient during basic training, learning and adapting until the right moment presented itself. Now that moment had arrived, and it was time to see just how far his potential could take him. Monday morning arrived with the weight of destiny pressing against Marcus's chest. He had spent the entire weekend thinking about Colonel Harrison's offer, calling his brother Danny whenever possible to try to extract information without revealing classified details. Danny had been mysteriously evasive about certain aspects of his military service, which now made perfect sense in light of what Marcus had learned. At precisely 0800 hours, Marcus knocked on Colonel Harrison's office door. The colonel was waiting with two other men Marcus didn't recognize, a lean, weathered sergeant major with calculating eyes and a captain whose bearing suggested special operations experience. "Private Rivera, meet Sergeant Major Walsh and Captain Morrison," Harrison said without preamble. "They're here to assess your suitability for the program we discussed." Walsh stepped forward, his handshake firm and his gaze penetrating. "Son, if you're here, it means you've decided to pursue this opportunity. Before we proceed, I need to make something crystal clear. What you're considering isn't just advanced military training. It's a complete transformation of how you think, fight, and live. Many good soldiers who attempt this program don't make it through. Are you prepared for that possibility?" Marcus met Walsh's stare directly. "Sergeant Major, I came this far by refusing to accept other people's limitations for me. I'm ready to find out what my actual limits are." Captain Morrison spoke for the first time, his voice carrying a slight southern accent. "What do you know about psychological resilience, Private Rivera?" The question seemed to come from nowhere, but Marcus sensed it was carefully chosen. "Sir, I know that mental toughness often matters more than physical strength. During basic training, I learned that my mind could push my body beyond what I thought was possible." "Good answer," Morrison replied. "But what we're talking about goes deeper than pushing through fatigue or discomfort. Special operations soldiers must be able to function effectively under extreme stress, in isolation, and sometimes in situations where conventional military training doesn't provide clear answers. They must make life or death decisions with incomplete information while maintaining absolute commitment to the mission. Colonel Harrison opened a different folder on his desk. Rivera, your psychological evaluation from basic training shows high scores for adaptability and stress tolerance. Your instructors noted that you never lost composure, even when facing significant challenges or criticism. But theoretical scores are different from real-world performance. Walsh walked over to a wall map showing various global regions marked with different colored pins. The Black Viper program operates in 3 phases. Phase 1 is selection and basic special operations training. This takes place over 6 months at a classified location where you'll learn advanced combat skills, survival techniques, languages, and intelligence gathering methods. Roughly 60% of candidates are eliminated during this phase. Morrison continued the briefing. Phase 2 is advanced specialization training. Based on your aptitudes and mission requirements, you'll develop expertise in specific areas such as demolitions, communications, medical support, or sniper operations. This phase lasts 4 months and eliminates another 20% of remaining candidates. Phase 3, Harrison concluded, is operational integration. You'll be assigned to an active Black Viper team and participate in real-world missions under the guidance of experienced operators. Only after successfully completing a full deployment cycle are you considered a fully qualified Black Viper. Marcus absorbed this information, understanding that he was being offered something extraordinary and dangerous. Sir, what kind of missions do Black Viper teams typically handle? The 3 officers exchanged glances before Walsh answered. Intelligence gathering in hostile territories, elimination of high-value targets, rescue operations, and occasionally missions that officially never happened. You would be operating in small teams, often without conventional support, in some of the most dangerous places on Earth. Morrison pulled out a tablet and showed Marcus a series of training videos. This is footage from selection training. Watch carefully and understand that what you're seeing represents the minimum standard expected from candidates. The videos showed soldiers navigating obstacle courses that made basic training look elementary. Candidates moved through simulated combat zones with live ammunition overhead, rappelled from helicopters in adverse weather conditions, and demonstrated marksmanship skills that bordered on superhuman. What struck Marcus most was the calm efficiency of successful candidates. They moved with the deadly precision that the Viper tattoo represented. The physical requirements alone eliminate many volunteers, Walsh explained. But the mental challenges are what truly separate those who succeed from those who don't. You'll face scenarios designed to break your psychological barriers, tests of loyalty and judgment that have no clear right answers, and situations where quitting seems like the only rational choice. Colonel Harrison leaned back in his chair. Rivera, I'm going to be brutally honest with you. I'm recommending you for this program based on potential, not proven capability. You're younger and less experienced than most candidates. Some people in the special operations community will question whether you belong there. Marcus felt the familiar burn of being underestimated, but this time it fueled determination rather than frustration. Sir, I've been hearing that my entire life. I've learned to let my performance speak louder than other people's assumptions. Morrison smiled slightly. That's the right attitude, but you need to understand the stakes. Failure in conventional military training means reassignment to a different unit. Failure in Black Viper selection could mean medical discharge if you're seriously injured, or psychological evaluation if you suffer a mental breakdown. Some candidates never fully recover from the experience. Walsh handed Marcus a thick packet of documents. These are the formal application materials, medical waivers, and security clearance paperwork. If you decide to proceed, everything must be completed within 72 hours. Once you submit these documents, there's no changing your mind. You'll be committed to attempting the full selection process. As Marcus flipped through the paperwork, Colonel Harrison added a personal note. I want you to understand something, Rivera. The reason I'm offering you this opportunity isn't charity or some attempt to prove a point about underestimated soldiers. It's because I genuinely believe you have the qualities necessary to succeed in this program and serve with distinction. Morrison stood and moved toward the door. Before you make your final decision, there's someone I want you to meet. He opened the door and gestured for someone to enter. Marcus was shocked when a familiar figure walked into the room, Sergeant Santos, the tattoo artist from East LA who had given him and Danny their Viper designs. "Hello, Marcus," Santos said with a warm smile. "I was wondering when we'd meet again." Harrison explained, Miguel Santos is now a civilian contractor who assists with candidate evaluation for the Black Viper program. He's here to provide some additional perspective on your decision. Santos took a seat across from Marcus. "I've been following your progress since the day you and your brother got those tattoos. Danny earned his through actions he can't discuss, but I gave you yours based on potential I saw in you. Now it's time to find out if my instincts were correct." "You've been watching me?" Marcus asked, surprise evident in his voice. "Not watching, exactly," Santos replied. "But, when someone receives a Black Viper tattoo, we keep track of their military service. Your performance in basic training confirmed what I suspected about your character and capabilities." Walsh returned to the conversation. "Rivera, I need to ask you directly, are you prepared to potentially sacrifice everything for the privilege of serving at this level? Your relationships, your comfort, your assumptions about who you are and what you're capable of." Marcus looked around the room at these men who had achieved the highest levels of military service. Each carried themselves with the quiet confidence that came from being tested in ways most people would never experience. The Black Viper tattoo on his arm seemed to pulse with energy, reminding him of his brother's words about precision, patience, and intelligence. "Gentlemen, I came into the army to push myself beyond what I thought was possible," Marcus said finally. "Everything I've learned about myself during basic training tells me I'm capable of more than anyone expected, including myself. If there's a chance to serve my country at the highest level while discovering my true potential, I have to take it." Colonel Harrison nodded approvingly. "That's the answer of someone who understands what they're committing to." Santos stood and shook Marcus's hand. "The Viper chooses when to strike, but it must be ready when that moment comes. You've been getting ready your whole life, Marcus. Now it's time to find out what you're really made of." Morrison handed Marcus a business card with only a phone number written on it. "Complete the paperwork and call this number when you're ready to begin. Transportation to the training facility will be arranged within 24 hours of your call." As the meeting concluded, Walsh offered one final piece of advice. "Rivera, the next few months will challenge everything you think you know about yourself. Remember that the goal isn't to become someone different, but to discover who you really are when everything comfortable and familiar is stripped away." Walking back to his barracks, Marcus felt the weight of the decision settling into his bones. The packet of documents in his hands represented a doorway to a future he had never imagined possible. The young man who had been mocked for his size and questioned for his tattoo was about to attempt something that would test the limits of human capability. That evening, as he began filling out the extensive paperwork, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. Every challenge in basic training, every doubt overcome, every moment of proving himself had been preparation for this opportunity. The Black Viper tattoo that had once been a source of ridicule was now his passport to the most elite military training available. But earning that opportunity was just the beginning. The real test was about to start, and failure was not only possible but probable for most who attempted it. Marcus Rivera was about to discover what it truly meant to be a Viper among soldiers. 6 months later, Marcus Rivera stood in formation with 11 other soldiers in a remote training facility buried deep within the Virginia mountains. Of the 43 candidates who had begun Black Viper selection, only 12 remained. Each man bore the physical and psychological scars of the most intensive military training program in the United States Armed Forces. Marcus barely recognized himself in the reflection he caught in windows or mirrors. The lean teenager who had arrived at basic training had been forged into something entirely different. His body was now a precisely tuned instrument of controlled violence and endurance. More importantly, his mind had been sharpened into a weapon capable of calculating life or death decisions in microseconds while maintaining absolute emotional control. The transformation hadn't been achieved without cost. During the third week of selection, Marcus had dislocated his shoulder during a night navigation exercise in freezing rain. While other candidates might have used the injury as an excuse to withdraw, Marcus had relocated the joint himself and continued the 18-hour course. The incident had earned him respect from instructors and fellow candidates who were beginning to understand that the smallest soldier among them might also be the most determined. Sergeant Major Walsh stood before the graduating class with the same penetrating gaze that had evaluated Marcus months earlier. Beside him, Captain Morrison held a case containing the coveted Black Viper qualification badges that represented admission into one of the military's most exclusive brotherhoods.
"Gentlemen, what you've accomplished over the past 6 months is remarkable," Walsh began.
"You've survived training that breaks most who attempt it. You've demonstrated skills that place you among the most capable soldiers on Earth. But today is not a celebration, it's a recognition that your real education is about to begin." Marcus listened intently while remembering the crucible experiences that had brought him to this moment. The survival training in the Appalachian wilderness where candidates had to live off the land for 2 weeks while evading capture teams. The psychological evaluation exercises where instructors had probed every weakness and fear, searching for breaking points that could be exploited by enemy interrogators. The marksmanship training that had transformed him into a sniper capable of placing shots accurately at distances that seemed impossible. Each phase had eliminated candidates who seemed perfectly capable. Johnson, the former football player who had mocked Marcus during basic training, had withdrawn during the 4th week when the mental pressure became unbearable. Other strong soldiers had been cut when they couldn't adapt to the intellectual demands of intelligence gathering and analysis. A few had suffered injuries that ended their participation despite their desperate desire to continue. Morrison stepped forward to begin the formal graduation ceremony. "Each of you has earned the right to wear the Black Viper badge, but, more importantly, you've earned the trust of soldiers who will depend on your skills and judgment in situations where failure means death." One by one, the surviving candidates stepped forward to receive their qualification badges. When Marcus's name was called, he felt a surge of pride mixed with humility. The badge itself was surprisingly simple, a coiled Black Viper identical to his tattoo, surrounded by small stars representing completed missions. As Morrison pinned the badge to Marcus's uniform, he spoke quietly enough that only Marcus could hear.
"Rivera, you've exceeded every expectation.
Your instructors are unanimous in their assessment that you have the potential to become one of the finest operators this program has ever produced." After the ceremony, Sergeant Major Walsh approached Marcus privately.
"Son, I have something for you that I think you'll find interesting." Walsh handed him a letter bearing familiar handwriting.
Marcus opened it and recognized his brother Danny's distinctive script. "Marcus, if you're reading this, it means you've accomplished something I wasn't sure anyone could do. Walsh tells me you not only survived Black Viper selection but excelled in ways that reminded him of operators with years of experience. I'm proud of you, little brother, but I'm not surprised. I knew when we got those tattoos that you had something special inside you.
I can finally tell you that I served with a Black Viper team during my 2nd deployment.
It was the most challenging and rewarding experience of my military career. The missions we completed saved lives and protected American interests in ways that will never be publicly acknowledged. You're about to join a brotherhood that operates in the shadows but serves in the light of the highest military ideals. The Viper teaches patience, precision, and the wisdom to know when to strike. You've learned the first 2 qualities during selection. The third will come with experience and the guidance of the operators you'll serve alongside. Welcome to the Black Vipers, Marcus. Make our family and our country proud." Marcus felt emotions he had kept carefully controlled during training threatening to overwhelm him.
The letter from Danny meant more than any official recognition or qualification badge.
Walsh watched Marcus read the letter before continuing. "Your brother was one of the best operators I worked with during his time with the unit.
Based on your performance here, you have the potential to surpass even his accomplishments."
Over the following weeks, Marcus was integrated into Bravo Team, a 4-man unit led by Master Sergeant Collins, a veteran of countless classified operations. Collins was exactly what Marcus had imagined an elite soldier would be: calm under pressure, devastatingly effective in combat, and possessed of a strategic mind that could adapt to changing circumstances in real time. "Rivera, forget everything you think you know about military operations," Collins told him during their first mission briefing.
"Black Viper teams operate with minimal oversight and maximum responsibility. Your decisions in the field can have international implications.
Your mistakes can get innocent people killed or compromise national security. Marcus's first operational deployment took the team to a hostile region where they were tasked with gathering intelligence on a terrorist network planning attacks against American interests. The mission required infiltrating a heavily guarded compound, obtaining specific documents, and extracting without detection or engagement if possible. As the team prepared for insertion, Marcus felt the familiar calm that had carried him through selection training.
The Black Viper tattoo on his arm seemed to pulse with energy, reminding him of every lesson learned during the grueling months of preparation.
The mission itself unfolded like a deadly dance choreographed by professionals who had performed similar operations dozens of times. Marcus's role was communications and overwatch, providing security while his teammates moved through the target building. When unexpected complications arose and guards appeared ahead of schedule, Marcus's sniper training allowed him to neutralize threats silently before they could alert the broader security force. The operation was completed successfully with no casualties and valuable intelligence obtained. As the team extracted to their safe house, Collins provided Marcus with feedback that validated months of intensive training. "Rivera, you performed tonight like an operator with years of experience. Your positioning was perfect, your decision-making was sound, and your execution was flawless. Welcome to the real Black Vipers." 6 months later, Marcus Rivera stood once again in Colonel Harrison's office, but this time as a proven special operations soldier returning from his first full deployment. The young man who had been mocked during basic training was now a decorated veteran of classified missions that had directly impacted American national security. Harrison reviewed Marcus's operational reports with obvious satisfaction. "Rivera, your team leader describes your performance as exceptional. You've participated in 7 successful missions without a single operational failure or compromise. That's a record that speaks to both your individual capabilities and your value as a team member." Marcus had learned to accept praise without letting it affect his focus or humility. "Sir, I had outstanding teammates and training that prepared me for everything we encountered. The success belongs to the entire team and the program that developed us." Spoken like a true professional, Harrison replied. "Which brings me to why I asked you here. The Black Viper program is expanding, and we need experienced operators to help train the next generation of candidates. Your unique background and proven capability make you an ideal instructor candidate." The offer represented another unexpected opportunity in a military career that had exceeded every prediction. Marcus thought about the recruits who would arrive at selection training carrying the same doubts and facing the same skepticism he had encountered. "Sir, if I can help other soldiers discover their potential the way this program helped me discover mine, I'd be honored to serve as an instructor." Harrison smiled and stood to shake Marcus's hand. "Rivera, you've come further than anyone imagined possible when you first stepped off that bus at Fort Benning. The tattoo that once made you a target for mockery has become a symbol of excellence that other soldiers aspire to earn." As Marcus left the colonel's office, he reflected on the extraordinary journey that had transformed him from an underestimated recruit into an elite special operations soldier. The Black Viper coiled around his arm was no longer just a tattoo. It was a badge of honor earned through dedication, sacrifice, and an unwillingness to accept other people's limitations. Walking across the base where his military career had begun, Marcus thought about the recruits currently struggling through basic training. Some of them undoubtedly felt the same doubts and faced the same skepticism he had experienced. Perhaps one of them carried the spark of potential that could be forged into something extraordinary with the right opportunity and guidance. The Viper had learned patience during basic training, precision during selection, and wisdom through operational experience. Now it was time to share those lessons with the next generation of soldiers who would defend their country in the shadows, asking for no recognition beyond the quiet satisfaction of missions accomplished and lives protected. Marcus Rivera had discovered that true strength wasn't measured by size or initial capability, but by the willingness to push beyond perceived limitations and the determination to never quit when the mission demanded everything he could give. The Black Viper tattoo that had once been mocked was now a symbol that opened doors to the highest levels of military service. As he prepared to begin his new role as an instructor, Marcus understood that his greatest mission might not be the classified operations he had completed, but the soldiers he would help develop into the elite warriors his country needed. The Viper's most important strike might be the inspiration he could provide to others who carried the same potential but hadn't yet discovered it within themselves.